Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Berkeley County Board of Education meeting this Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. I call this meeting to order. I declare a quorum is present and the media has been notified. I would like to note for the minutes that Mr. McClellan is joining by phone, and all others will be recorded for their attendance here. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I made the motion.
Second. There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Conder to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 8-0. We'll now move on to agenda item 1C, approval of the minutes for the board meeting on March 10th, 2020.
I made the motion.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Bradley, to approve the minutes of the board meeting on March 10th, 2020. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now to agenda item 1D, approval of the minutes for the board meeting on March 16th,
Made the motion.
2020.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Littleton. Is there any discussion? Mac's having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to try to get him back on the phone so that he can participate.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
There's nothing like technology.
Your call.
I got a 7. I keep wanting it to be 9 because that's my actual job, but let's see if I can still get him back on the phone.
Hello?
Mac,
Yes.
can you hear now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, good deal. All right, we're on agenda item 1D, approval of the minutes for the board meeting on March 16th. There's a motion by Ramsey, a second by Littleton. There was no discussion where you were getting ready to call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We'll now move on to agenda item 1E, approval of the board meeting minutes on March 23rd, 2020.
Made the motion.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Littleton. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 8-0. Agenda item 1F, approval of the minutes for the board meeting on April 7th, 2020.
Made the motion.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Littleton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And Madam Chairwoman, prior to the beginning of our executive session and our normal agenda, I would like to take a moment of personal privilege as superintendent to recognize the district's loss of Rick Van Brunt, who passed away last week. I'm sad that I did not get to personally know Mr. Van Brunt, but as he has been reported to me, he was one of the district's largest characters through the years. Yes, Mr. Barrow acknowledging that. Sorry I didn't get to know him. First, a teacher and coach, and then he became the principal of College Park Middle in 1979, and finished his career at the district office as supervisor of all middle schools. During his years at the district, he influenced, worked with, or supervised many employees who continue to serve, including several that are still on cabinet today. In fact, he was our own Mr. Barrow's predecessor at the district office. Mr. Van Brunt loved this district and our kids and left behind a wonderful legacy of 2 daughters who continue with us as highly regarded educators in our district, Kim Pond and Jennifer Bowie, and his son-in-law, Chris Pond. To the Van Brunt family, we thank you for sharing him for all these years, and we honor him in this meeting in our thoughts and actions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Amen.
I say thank you. He was loved by many, and he leaves a great legacy. Thank you for sharing. We'll now entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so I've got Ms. Conder and the second with Mr. McQuillan.
Yes.
All right, the stated purpose of executive session is discussion of pending employment matters to include the appointment of an administrator and administrator contracts. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 8-0. I would like to state for the audience that we will return to regular session no earlier than 6 p.m., but that is earlier than our normal 6:30 p.m. So we expect to return at approximately 6 p.m. We are now in executive session. We'll now entertain a motion to return to regular session.
Make a motion.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Mr. McClellan to return to regular session. Like to state for the minutes, no action was taken in executive session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 8-0. Please now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So next is agenda item 3B. We normally take Head Start expenditures and budget reports go through committee because we are so off schedule with the virus. This is going to go straight to the full board tonight. So agenda item 3B is move to approve the Head Start budget expenditures report for February 2020, the credit card report for February 2020, the cost of living adjustment and quality improvement SF424 application, and non-federal share waiver request SF424 application. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Walford, a second by Ms. Littleton. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the items needed for Head Start? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 8-0, and the Head Start items are approved. Up next is agenda item 3C, the 2020-2021 allocation formulas. Dr. Whitley.
Good evening, Chairman Ramsey, Superintendent Ingram, and board members. We are asking for approval of the Berkeley County School District 2020-21 allocation formulas. Minor adjustments of all levels for the assistant principal formula have been made. Students who are potential candidates for the STAR program at Berkeley High School will receive these services at their home schools. This is a reduction of 6 teaching allocations. At the present time, there are 56 students in the program. An adjustment to the elementary classified instructional assistant has been aligned to reflect the art and music allocation at each school. The intent of this allocation is to be used in the related arts rotation at the elementary level. Administrative assistant allocations at the elementary level have been eliminated. Related arts allocations for middle schools will be uniform. The high school driver's ed athletic assistant allocation will be eliminated, and custodial allocations at the high school level have been adjusted for those schools with a population greater than 1,500. Are there any questions?
Can you go back to Star Academy? So Star Academy is currently at Berkeley High School, and so this program would be disbanded essentially, and those students that are ninth grade age but 8th grade credits would be serviced at their home school through Edgenuity or through
We'll
a
be
virtual
using it.
platform.
We'll be using Edgenuity. I've talked with Ms. Wolf or Dr. Wolf in great detail about this. We have an allocation at the school, a credit recovery person for the lab. My understanding is from some of our middle school principals is the first 9 weeks, those folks sometimes do whatever is needed around the school. So I think that this would be a good opportunity to put a really robust program in to support those students, and they would not have to leave their school. I do have a letter here from Mr. Steele about the Star Academy. It's his recommendation that the program be closed, and he talked about the annual renewal for the program costs the district $300,000 a year. That's in addition to the 6 allocations. And right now we do have 56 students. Enrollment has been on a steady decline in recent years with fewer students meeting eligibility requirements for the program. He feels the decrease in the eligible students proves that current middle school interventions are working well. And he feels that he will be able to take those folks who have been teaching in the Star Academy, and there will be positions at his school for these folks.
So the other allocation that caught my attention was, is it PE or was it driver's ed? So
The driver's ed assistant. We've had a driver's ed assistant at each school. And this is something, when I came into this position, it was a study hall position. And folks are like, we don't have study hall, but we need it for driver's ed. I said, okay. So we renamed it driver's ed, I think, / athletic assistant. One of the high school principal said, you know, and this was like last year, the year before, if we ever have to start making cuts, we could go to this allocation that would be the least hurtful. So I started doing some investigation into what that position actually entailed. And what I found out is for 6 weeks, these folks have no children because the students are with the driver's ed teacher. A driver's ed teacher can only have 15 students per class. When they go out to drive, there could be 3 in the car, so that leaves 12 behind. So when I was talking, the principal felt it was very feasible that those 12 students left behind could go into the library or could go into a computer lab, and they could be monitored that way. But there was 6 weeks in the fall and 6 weeks in the spring that these folks did not have any students. So, and again, thinking about the budget, looking at places that we can really tighten up, yet make sure that we're still supporting our core areas in our instructional programs.
any other discussion?
I've got a couple of questions, Dr. Whitley. And I think I know the answer, but I just want some clarity.
Okay.
On the allocations in the elementary and middle, I think the definition or description of the allocation says regular ed students. The number of regular ed students divided by a certain number.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, there are special ed students in resource that are not necessarily considered regular ed, but are they considered into the total population in terms of the calculation for the allocation?
Yes, sir. And I understand when we use regular education student, we're talking any non-self-contained student.
Understood. So that
would be
clarifies
counted
it,
in.
but
Yes, sir.
the definition or the description is a little bit confusing there.
Okay, I'll work on that.
But I just
No.
had a question.
No.
The other
That was
question I
good.
have on allocations at the elementary and middle level are with regard to related arts. And as you know, there are some schools that have quite large self-contained populations in the schools. And I wonder if that is taken into account, because these self-contained students aren't self-contained all day. They go to related arts classes at least once and usually twice a day. So is the allocation taking into account those self-contained students to possibly bump up a little bit?
No, sir, they are not.
Okay. Now, I saw a couple of things on the high school.
Yes, sir.
And I think we did this last year or year before, I may be wrong. Each high school gets a 1-0 football teacher.
Yes, sir.
I thought we did that.
They do, yes, sir. And it's
This is a
still on
new
their
allocation it's a new allocation?
No, sir.
It's the same as it's always been, each high school
I
gets.
thought it was under a new allocation.
Oh, no, sir, it doesn't have a line through it or it didn't highlight it, so that means that it's been there.
Okay. What about the 2 new teachers at Goose Creek High School, 2 arts teachers?
Those are still in the allocation formula because Goose Creek is a school of the arts.
So this was last year's, maybe I'm confused, because I thought this was a new allocation for these football teachers and for the 2 arts teachers at Goose Creek.
Okay. This format, we've used it for several years, and what I've changed on it from last year, I've highlighted. If I've highlighted and it's struck out, that means that I'm asking that it be removed. If it's just highlighted, then I'm asking that it be added. It shows you the difference from the allocation formula for 1920.
So basically, it's the same sheet you've been working off of, but if you want something eliminated, there's a strike through, and if you need something changed, it's highlighted. But when you see the football coach, that of course has always been there, but it wasn't highlighted nor was it struck out, so that means it's the same as it was for the previous year,
Right,
correct?
it's the same as it was in 1920. And that allocation of a football coach was given to high schools. That's for that head football coach, and they teach part-time, and the school is allowed to use that part-time in some schools. Their head football coach teaches social studies, some it's PE. But it allows them flexibility when they're choosing a head football coach.
I'm still confused, but because I thought it was a new allocation, but as you were mentioning, I recall having addressed it last year. So were they hired? Were these folks actually hired last year? If it was in the budget last year, were they actually hired?
Right. And what happens is when you do the high school allocations, You have the formula, and and let's say you come up with 92 teachers, and then everyone is given that additional allocation, which is a football teacher. So that's how that was derived. That's an additional allocation over and above the allocation formula. And at Cross High School, they have, theirs is the AD, but he also teaches people.
So are we taking up in this year's budget for these positions that have already been hired?
It's just, this motion is for the change, for the change at Berkeley High School for the 6 allocations for
Sorry, yeah.
Star Academy.
I get that.
It's the change for driver's ed. What else?
Anything that's highlighted, that's a change.
So we're only, the motion is only to approve the changes in the allocation formula.
Correct.
Okay. All righty.
Well, actually, we haven't made a motion yet, but we're going to make a motion to,
Also, if you look on the elementary, we have had, that you approved last year, 5 administrative assistants. Those are teacher contracts that have done some administrative work at the elementary schools. We feel that with the budget, that it's very important that those teacher allocations go back to teacher allocations to support the classroom. So that's why those are highlighted and struck through.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to approve 2021 allocation formulas as presented.
Second.
there's a motion by Ms. Littleton, a second by Mr. Ramsey. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. We'll now move on to action for an
Thank you.
executive session. Thank you, Dr. Whitley. We have a couple of administrator appointments tonight. We always like to celebrate these folks, and as soon as we're done social distancing, we will be here to celebrate all of these new appointments. So first off, Mr. Ramsey.
I'd like to make the motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Dr. Kimberly Murray as the new principal of Bowen Corner Elementary School, with a contract to take effect on July the 1st, 2020.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Mr. McClellan. Very sad that Dr. Murray cannot be here tonight. Oh, we have a headshot. That makes me happy. I was going to say, surely she's watching and celebrating with her family. Send us a selfie with your family so we can post it. The motion is to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Dr. Kimberly Murray as the new principal of Bowens Corner Elementary School with a contract to take effect on July 1st, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. Dr. Murray, we are so grateful for you accepting this position and welcome you and your family to the Berkeley County School District family and administration. And seriously, take a selfie with your family and send it to us so we can see your happy faces. All right, next up, Ms. Condor.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Dr. Tina Hoots as the principal of Nexton Elementary School with a contract to take effect on July the 1st, 2020.
Second, there's a motion by Ms. Condor, a second by Walford, to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Dr. Tina Hoots as the principal of Nexton Elementary School with a contract to take effect on July 1st, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. Thank you, Dr. Hoots, for continuing at Nexton Elementary School. The community is very pleased with Dr. Hoots, and we are happy for her to have the permanent principal title for Nexton Elementary School. All Next, Ms. Littleton.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve 2020-2021 administrative contracts as presented.
Second.
Here's a motion by Ms. Littleton, a second by Mr. Ramsey, to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the 2020-2021 administrative contracts as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. Ms. Deli.
I'd like to make the recommendation, the motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the 2020-2021 teacher contracts as presented.
Second. There's a motion by Ms. Kelly, a second by Walford, to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve the 2020-2021 teacher contracts as presented in executive session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. Finally, I move to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve that formal complaint and report of breach of contract for one teacher to be sent to the State Board of Education to ask that appropriate action be taken against the employee for unprofessional conduct as discussed during executive session.
Second.
There's a motion by Walford, a second by Ms. Condor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, 8-1. We'll now move on to the committee reports. We'll start with the Committee on Academics and Innovation. Chair.
Yeah, we're trying to,
We're trying to social distance appropriately and only bring people in right on time. So next item on the agenda are reports from the standing committees. First, a report from the Committee on Academics and Innovation. Chairwoman Ann Condor is recognized.
Madam Chairman, the Committee on Academics and Innovation met on March 10th, 2020. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the Head Start Budget Expenditures Report for January 2020 and Head Start Credit Card Report for January 2020.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Also, on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve all committee recommended books selected by the teachers from each school as presented except for the 4th and 5th grade social studies supplemental textbooks.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
I'm sure you recall a conversation and a discussion we had on the 4th and 5th grade social studies supplemental materials. These are not mandatory, these are supplemental. And as I recall, Ms. Littleton was not a part of that meeting and did not voice a vote. It was not approved to, but it was not necessarily rejected. I thought we were going to look into the possibility
the
of...
4th and 5th grade social studies supplement will come into committee, the first committee meeting in May, and we can debate that book. So this will approve everything but that book, and we can move that on. I don't know if we're going to have money. I don't know if we're going to spend money, not have money for books. You decide what you want money on, but I don't know what kind of funding there will be from the state for books. But if there is funding, we want everything approved. So this will move all the books but that one book, or those two supplements. The two supplements will come back to committee the first meeting in May, and we can debate those two supplements, and then the committee can decide if they want to bring it back.
I just wanted to make sure that they weren't off the table entirely.
No, sir, I just didn't want to have a separate single committee meeting for one book, so it'll be on the May committee meeting.
Okay.
Any member on the board is more than welcome to review those books. If you have any questions or concerns about them. They're located back there, right, Dr. Wolf?
Correct.
Right. So if you have an opportunity and you want to look at them, please feel free to do so, and then you can vote according to how you feel about them.
I've actually read both of them before the meeting, so I'm familiar with both, all of the contents of those.
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that, Mr. Barrow.
Well, you don't need to be so snide, Ms. Condra.
I'm not. I'm happy that you took the time to look at them, Mr. Barrow.
I've taken your advice and read the books. Thank you.
We'll bring that back to committee. So the 4th and 5th grade social studies supplement, so this is to approve all except that 4th and 5th social studies supplement, which will come back to the Academics and Innovation Committee next month. So all in favor of the books except 4th and 5th grade social studies, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Also, Madam Chairman, on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the second reading of proposed dates for middle and high school summer school programs.
There's a recommendation from committee, no second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Okay. I'm getting to it. Thank you. Madam Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Condor. Next is the Committee on Finance and Human Resources. Chairman Michael Ramsey, you're recognized.
Madam Chairwoman, the Committee on Finance and Human Resources met on March the 10th, 2020. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the out-of-state travel request as presented.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, it's probably the first time in my career as superintendent that I'm requesting that you deny a motion. And the reason is these trips were arranged prior to COVID-19, and during my superintendent's report, I'll be implementing a travel restriction or freeze. So for the first time in my career as a superintendent, I'm asking you to deny our request.
Okay, so because this is opposite of what the committee recommends, we need to vote down the first motion, and then we need to make a full board motion. So we're going to call the question, which Dr. Ingram wants us to oppose.
That's great.
So, Dr. Ingram does not want anyone to be in favor of this. So all in favor, please respond by saying aye. All opposed, nay. Nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. So now we'll have a new motion, which will require a second because it's not.
I make the motion that we do not approve the travel request as presented out of committee.
Second. So there is a motion to deny the request by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Wofford. We do not really like to have travel restrictions, and we already had pretty serious travel restrictions, but the situation has created a more tense situation for travel where we have to stay even closer to home for the time being. So
Some of these took place, some of the travel requests took place before the lockdown. So no travel took place, that we're not turning down approval of something that took place. Is that correct?
that's not understanding. This would be for future or after.
Well, that took place between then and now is what I'm asking. And no travel took place on that report?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not turning down something that already happened.
In fact, I'm getting notifications for events as far as this coming fall that have already decided to go virtual. And lots of things are being locked down. One is the SCASA conference. I called SCASA just the other day, and they're debating that. And I basically told them, I said, well, we're not coming. I mean, I'm implementing travel restrictions. She said, well, could you participate virtually? I said, well, sure, we can participate virtually, but they're in the enviable position of, if they cancel right now, they might lose a lot of money because they set the hotel rooms and stuff like that, so they're negotiating too. So lots of different entities are, if they haven't already turned virtual, they are exploring that possibility. And some are holding out that there may be some opportunity, but we've had trips that are canceled or said that they would be virtual as late fall.
Yeah, the ones I was referring to actually took place, I thought I saw on the list, late March. And so
Yeah, well, we
you
didn't,
didn't go on any of those, okay,
not that I'm aware of.
okay,
I don't think we
I
did.
hope we didn't go.
I don't think we-
I don't think we
I don't think we did.
okay.
Somebody needs to fess up if they went. All right, so all in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my report.
All right, next is the Committee on Facilities and Capital Planning. Mr. McQuillan is on the phone. Mac, you want to do the reports, or do you have someone here to do the reports for you? What's your preference?
I'm fine to do it as long as y'all can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah, you sound good. All right, so next is the Committee on Facilities and Capital Planning. Chairman Matt McQuillan, you are recognized.
Madam Chairwoman, the Committee on Facilities and Capital Planning met on March 10, 2020. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the purchase-sale agreement between Berkeley County School District and the Carnes Crossroad Development as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Also, on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the proposed transportation schedule for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
There's a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0.
Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. McQuillan. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Ingram.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. I think you have in your packets, we have a revised District Teacher of the Year selection process. Starts this week. In fact, I was able to jump on 2 meets to congratulate 2 of our 8 finalists today. If you can look at this schedule, if any of you would like to participate virtually, either let Kelly Wolf or myself know, and we'll make sure that you get a chance to do that. But this should be in your packet. Also in your packet, deviation from last year. This is usually the time of year we do our Head Start training. It's required. You have a handout where there is a link that you can go to, and then if you will view the training and then sign that you have done that and return it to Lacey, if you would, and we need to have that done by May 12th, if you would, please. So everybody should have that. Additionally, I would like to say that in order to prepare for summer learning, we're not going to take up Chromebooks. We're going to leave them in the hands of our kids to prepare for any summer activities and opportunities that we may be able to devise to keep learning going. And I think that was a really wise decision. And we are planning rather immediately. We're planning for more administrators at school levels and central services to come back to work. We're going to be staggering schedules and practicing social distancing as always, but we'll be getting folks back to work, particularly in maintenance. We usually talk and brag about our 100 days of summer. We have a unique window of opportunity here. We have a lot of days available to do a lot of good stuff, and we'll be able to, I think, do lots of things, but yet stay safe through social distancing. And as I said in the motion that I asked you to turn down, I am implementing a travel freeze in order to save money until we have a clearer financial picture. And I would like to read a statement because I know a lot of people out there are anxious and curious. During these trying times, we have learned that we can be flexible and make the necessary adjustments needed to keep our school district running while following all the governor's orders. As an example, our technology department has worked to create an online registration for the 2020-2021 school year for all students district-wide to begin on May 11th. This will include our CERDEP and kindergarten students. In particular, we know that K-Bay parents are interested in the registration process based on this board's implementation of an enrollment cap at K-Bay elementary and middle schools. K-Bay registration will also begin on May 11th. After all the documents have been submitted and their registration is complete, newly enrolled students for the 2021 school year in grades 1 through 8 will be placed on a time-stamped wait list. Kindergarten registration will also begin on May 11th and run through the 20th of May for students to be drawn in a lottery process for the available kindergarten seats. The lottery will take place on May 25th via Facebook Live. More information regarding all registration, including K-Bay, will be issued by our communications office. We know that uncertainty adds to our stress level. However, we appreciate everyone's patience as we navigate through these exceptional times. Thank you, and Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. One of the most important things Dr. Ingram has already covered, which is the Head Start training. Not only are we the Berkeley County School Board, but we are the board for Head Start, which is a federal grant, and we have responsibilities acting in that board capacity as well. So the link to the training is on this piece of paper. Sign it. You can send it back to Lacey. You can snap a picture of it and email it to her. You can fax it to her. All kinds of ways. We just need your actual signature, your name and your signature on this piece of paper for records, because that is a federal grant and we need to maintain our federal commitment. We do expect to have regular board meetings in May, with committee meetings the first meeting in May, and our full board meeting the second meeting in May. Virtual meetings were very difficult, or at least they were for me, and there is lots of work to do as we steer the school district towards closing the school year, and most importantly, understanding our revenues and our budgets and being able to move forward with the budgets that we have. So immediately following this meeting, we will be having our first budget workshop. All right, next agenda item 10A. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Littleton. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Full board meeting is adjourned. Normally we would move and get closer to each other and sit in more of a workshop style meeting, but the world doesn't really allow that, so we're just going to stay put and keep rolling. So next up, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Berkeley County Board of Education budget workshop. This is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. I call this meeting to order. I declare a quorum is present and the media has been notified. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make motion.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Mr. McQuillan to approve the agenda of the budget workshop. Is there any discussion? We are required by law to have a certain number of budget workshops, a public hearing, and also have our budget heard multiple times, which is why we're here in person. This is very hard things to hear, and we needed to be able to govern in person. So all in favor of approving the agenda of the budget workshop, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 9-0. Ms. Smith, thank you. I know this is a very stressful time, so we will now give it over to you to get started.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Wofford, Dr. Ingram, and board members. This budget workshop is going to be very different than anything we've seen in the past. We're in a very different financial situation than we were this time last year. We're in daily discussions with our financial advisor. Is that better? We are in daily discussions with our financial advisors on discussing our capital plan, and we've been in daily discussions with our general fund budget. But for the purposes of this evening, we're going to be talking about our operating budget, our general fund. I'm going to give you some bad news, good news scenarios, and we'll get your feedback at the end of the presentation, and some of my scenarios will help give you some information to better make your decisions. When we look at the trends over the past 3 years and what we project to receive at the current fiscal year ending 2020, we have received an average of about $15 million each year in additional revenue. At this time last year, including reassessment and growth, our projected revenue was $322 million. The bad news is that the projected revenue will be short of our budgeted revenue by about $7 million. But the good news is that we've been sensitive to this. We have been tracking this on a monthly basis, and we knew that revenues would not be coming in as strong as we anticipated. We put measures in place to ensure that we will have a balanced budget. In addition to COVID-19, we will see a reduction in expenditures in utilities, travel, and Kelly services. The shortfall was not a result of financial irresponsibility. It was a difficult year because of projected revenues and reassessment. To the board's credit, we rolled back millage in 2019, which is reflected in the current tax notices. We may have missed the mark a bit here on projected revenue, but we should finish our year with revenues in excess of expenditures. Looking forward to 2021, this is going to be a very, very tough year. After much discussion, we know 2021 will be a problematic revenue year. The bad news, currently we are projecting a dip in our revenues of $7 million. That will bring us to a $14 million reduction from our current budget. The good news, if we move to a zero-based budgeting process, we are confident that we can develop a fiscally responsible budget for next year. We've also had 2 strong fund balance years of growth, and we are in a good financial position. The state requires us to have 15% of operating expenditures as a fund balance, which is $48.3 million. The board requires 18%, which equates to $58 million. At the end of 2019, our unassigned fund balance was $72.3 million, which is 22% of operating expenditures. This is a result of good financial management. This slide shows our must-haves. Our necessary expenditures are at $276 million without allocating the first dollar to schools or departments. Salaries alone make up 75.5% of our current budget at $243 million. This does not include any vacancies or any money set aside for new teacher allocations for growth. So before I go into zero-based budgeting, I do want to tell the board thank you very much for setting this as a goal. I'll be first to admit I was extremely nervous about this process, but I think it is going to take us in the right direction. Okay, one of my least favorite sayings is, this is the way we've always done it, but I'm going to tell you how we've always done it and then the concept of zero-based budgeting. So in the past, with the way we would budget, we would just keep adding expenditures on top of expenditures and to match up with our revenue stream. With the concept of zero-based budgeting, it requires everyone to look at their budgets in depth and remove excess expenditures without negatively affecting our students. This method ensures that all components of the budget are cost-effective and relevant to the district's strategic plan. I'm confident that moving forward, we can develop a fiscally responsible plan for next year. So how do we plan for 2021? It is not our recommendation to make drastic cuts at school levels. We want them to operate effectively and efficiently and have the ability to make necessary purchases for our students. Earlier, you approved equitable formulas for personnel at our schools, and At the next finance meeting, I will present a supply, technology, and non-revenue sports formula allocation for your approval. As part of zero-based budgeting, we have asked departments to make cuts by looking at their true needs and focus on how the money is spent. Administration is prepared to recommend a travel freeze. I see that Dr. Ingram has already discussed that. The previous slide showed $243 million in salaries and benefits alone, not including vacancies. We are reviewing vacancies and critical positions that departments may need to effectively perform daily operations. Our focus going forward is retaining our current workforce, and this board has always made our teachers a priority, including giving aggressive increases, including a 6% increase last year. The state has recommended that all districts pay current salaries in 2021 and the 2021 school year and not give step increases. This is strictly related to COVID-19 and the uncertainty of revenues at this time. I would like to give you all the opportunity to discuss board priorities and any ideas that you may have on cuts. I would like to mention that if you do add to the budget, we would probably need to look for an area of reduction, and I'll also be available for questions.
If I may, I would like to commend the board for making it an official goal of mine, because all four goals from the McCrell instrument I wrote down on chart paper, and they stay hung in my office, and the cabinet sees them every Monday because my goals are their goals. And we went through a zero-based budgeting process, which was painstaking but fruitful. Is that accurate, Ashley?
That is accurate. I was very nervous at
And
first,
it's
but it
probably
was.
something that, we've been needing to do, and this, sometimes we don't let a crisis slip by. Sometimes there's opportunity in crisis, and this is one of those times. So we've been able to take a very bad picture and make it manageable. But there's more pain. It's not going to be painless. But you can rest assured that we are committed to only spending what we need to, and we're not going to compromise the value of education to children. So congratulations, Ashley. I know you and several other people worked very hard on this.
The team, yes.
The team, it's been a team effort to go through every school,
Every school, line by line.
line by line.
Department
And
by
it's time consuming, but it's paid off, I think.
It's been very beneficial.
When we look at the schools, we have a number of schools that are very, very low in census. Is this an opportunity to look at possibly combining some of the smaller schools with a little bit larger schools and shift our resources to better serve the kids, as well as to save some money on our budget?
I agree. I think this is the best opportunity to look at combining schools. If, of course, that would be a board decision, and I will support any decision that's made by the board. There's going to be very, very tough decisions to be made this year. It is a very bleak year. Hopefully we will come out of this in the next couple of years, but I do think the next 2 years are probably going to be very difficult. So these are the times now to make those very hard decisions.
Actually, didn't we approve a certain number of 70-something new teacher allocations a couple of meetings ago?
We do, don't quote me on this, I want to say it was 63.4, close. And it was approximately a $4.3 million increase to the budget. I did not have those numbers in here because I stated I didn't have those for growth. However, with the new allocations that were approved this evening, I think that may have changed some of that, may have dropped some of the needs down a little bit. So I'll have to get a new number from Dr. Whitley, but that will decrease the need for all of those allocations.
So if the funding from the state is based upon actual enrollment, the state is going to have to send us a certain amount of money per teacher, and then we will have to supplement the state. So you're saying that these 60-something teachers would cost us an additional $4 million to supplement the state salaries?
Well, based on the information that we've received from the state, we are to use the same allocation as received last year, so we would not be receiving any additional funds from the state. There's also been discussion that there would probably be less revenue received from the state. There's nothing written in stone, but they have indicated that we should work off of last year's numbers and not, there was no indication that we would receive any additional funds.
I also am very skeptical of the money that was in the relief package,
CARES Act.
the CARES Act, that they're actually going to give us our allocations from last year and the CARES Act. I don't believe I just can't believe they're going to do that. I just don't trust the state enough to believe that's what they're going to do. So I think we've counted for that as well, that our CARES Act money would be included with.
And I would be very careful with the CARES Act funds, mainly because it is a one-time. Yes, it is supposed to be used for operating expenditures, but I would be extremely cautious on allocating those funds and then anticipating getting them again, because you won't see them again in future years. So I would be extremely careful in allocating those on recurring expenditures. Yes, they want you to spend it on operating, but be very, very cautious of putting salaries to that amount.
I would agree. I inherited a budget back in North Carolina where we had got special funding, and the previous administration had tied 23 positions to it. And then as that money dwindled, it became a real burden to find funds to keep those people employed. So I would agree. I would not want to put I wouldn't recommend putting CARES Act money. That's very soft money. I wouldn't put it into salaries or any recurring expenses.
So the allocation formula that we passed tonight is moot.
So I don't think it's moot. I think it will actually help our budget next year. I think it's going to align the schools with the right and the proper amount of personnel. And I think that if we can move some of the additional staff, the current staff that we have into some of those vacant positions that are out there now, I think it's going to eliminate the need for additional allocations, and I think it's going to save us money next year.
I just text Karen to see if she'd come back over here. The allocation changes reduce that 63 number considerably. And I can't remember.
5.5?
I think it's less than 10, but I don't want to overspeak, so I text her to come back. But it greatly reduces, it washes almost our numbers from what she requested before. So
And that's one of the reasons I didn't include the number here, is because I knew we were trying to get that down and still have the appropriate staff in the schools, and make sure we have our ratios, and we're not changing our ratios, we're just changing the staffing allocations, and it will still provide for the ratios to stay the same, but it would reduce the amount of those teacher positions that are and classified, many positions that were on last year's formula.
The math doesn't add up to me.
Well, part of it is things like with our new allocation formula, is some of the assistant principals are being reassigned. And another part of it is like at the elementary schools where you get to a certain percentage of students, then you get another assistant principal or you get another position. An example with the elementary schools is like before, when you got to 950 students, you got an additional assistant principal. We've moved that number now to 1,000 students. So it's different things like that, but now we have Dr. Whitley, she can speak to it better than I can.
Karen, I was trying to, I know you and I had a discussion about the allocation changes, positions requested, and how many positions net. So for the number we had March 10th to the allocation changes tonight, approximately how many additional positions do you think instead of 63, how many is it?
Okay, we had asked for 62.3. Out of that, 51 was for the general education, okay? Out of that 51, the 6 teacher allocations at Berkeley High School that was voted in the allocation formula takes us down to 45. there was an additional teacher at a school when I went back and scrubbed that was over allocated down to 44. 5.5 additional related arts, which brings us down to 38.5. The 5 administrative assistants brings us to 33.5. I've also gone back and looked at schools where if they were close to keeping somebody, I left them there. Well, I didn't have any grace this time, so there were 14 that I can move to where there's a need. I do have 12 that I'm holding for the Westview schools for the possible additional ones that are needed when the folks come over from the Cane Bay area. If those were not needed, I can get it down to less than probably around 10 out of that 51. And certainly I'm still working and will monitor the enrollment very closely.
But if you cut teachers, you increase pupil-teacher ratio.
No, sir. When I go back and I look, I'm still holding to those student-teacher ratios. For example, let's say that at a school they may have 126 students in 3rd grade. There's 25 students per 3rd grade. 126, we said, is 1 to 25, and we allocate and let them go over 1 and all the grade levels before we go to the next. Instead of just giving them a 5 right now, I may have left them with a 6, okay, because they were 1 over. But I'm going back and taking that one until that there's a need, and then I will put it back.
The job fair that occurred when we approved this 62.3,
Right.
were there any folks that were issued contracts?
We have hired about 129 folks, but we've had resignations also. So we have not overhired. And that's one of the reasons that I brought the allocation formula to the board tonight, because I wanted to be able to, before we hire and fill positions, then if there are cuts at schools, only ensure that those folks have a spot at that school if at all possible. You know, the intent is that we have the least disruption possible.
So we may have some attrition at various levels, even in the district level, to put people back in the classrooms to make sure that the allocations are not too high.
We are working very hard to protect our teacher-student ratio. None of that was changed at all for our core areas. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we will probably all be in concert that that's the one thing we really want to protect are the student-teacher ratios, and which is why y'all did an exercise in zero-based budgeting, because you want to cut everything before you consider the impact of those numbers.
And when we're talking about redoing the allocation, what we're talking about is allocations. It's not folks losing their positions, because we have a number of openings in our district, and we're just making sure that our allocations are tight. The folks that have a position, they're in the best spot possible before we hire.
Thank you for looking at this so closely. This has got to be painstaking.
Well, the painstaking part was Ashley on Daniel Island and myself in Pinopolis on a go-to meeting. I mean,
That's a new kind of togetherness.
Well,
it really was.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you both for really dissecting everything and looking very closely at the allocations, and keeping your thumb and basically on the pulse of what we need to do in the upcoming year. It's critical that we do that, and I have to commend you both, because I wouldn't want to have to do it. I mean, seriously, that's got to be a very hair-pulling, painstaking operation, looking at all of this and dissecting it and trying to figure out what we're going to do. So thank you both very much. I do appreciate you.
It's much harder to think about what you want to cut instead of what you want to spend your money on. It makes it much more difficult. And I will be cautious to under budget almost, because I don't think that we really fathom the economic impact of this shutdown. That businesses haven't opened back up. I've already seen several businesses that don't plan to open back up. And if you know very much about school budgeting at all, you know a lot of the burden of a school district is on the back of small businesses. And if those small businesses, because large businesses negotiate fees in lieu of taxes, and individual homes get credits. So really small businesses carry the burden of school districts. And if small businesses do not thrive, there's no one to pay the bills, quite honestly. So I know this is bleak, and until we really open the state back up and open the county back up and start to really do business again and start to see revenues, I'm skeptical even of the number the state has given us. If the federal government is going to allocate more money, I'm not advising for or against that. I have my personal opinions on federal money with strings attached. But I think we as a board have to be real cognizant of this community, of the small business members, and that we really cannot predict that taxes are going to continue to be paid by these businesses. So we need to prioritize our kids and our current employees first, and focus on that and cut everything else that we possibly can to keep focus on kids and keep focus on current employees.
Isn't the step increase the responsibility of the school district and not the state?
It is, however, they have said that they want all districts to not give a step increase.
I understand. So do we have any idea how much money we'd be saving if we did not do the 2% step to all employees under 28 years? Just have a guess?
It's probably around, just a rough guess, about $3 million.
So you could hire 50 teachers for $3 million if you chose to not give the 2% step increase. You could actually use those funds, and if necessary out of the fund balance, to make sure that the core instructional programs are not diminished by increasing class size.
I think that's assuming that $3 million would be there.
Well, we have 72 in the fund balance.
Caution on spending salaries out of fund balance, because you will have to make that up in future years with revenue.
Well, we have extraordinary times, and I think we all agree that the pupil-teacher ratio is critical to a good education. Once you get over 28 kids in the classroom, you're going downhill.
I don't think our allocations increase your student-pupil ratio. Now, I feel like if we get on the verge of that, we would have to consider something drastic, but I don't think what we proposed would change your ratio.
Right, it's my understanding that it does not change the teacher-per-pupil ratios.
Core subject stays the same.
The whole thought right now is we're being as conservative and prudent as we can, because one thing we're not even discussing at this time is additions in new schools and how we're going to fund those. So part of my thought with the strong fund balance that we have is we can use that for leverage. And so it's, we all have the desire to lower class size. Before this happened, I was very eager and excited about looking to lower third grade class size, because that is what's closest to my heart, second and third grade. But right now, for, those of us that's lived long enough, and some of y'all have lived longer than me, but 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011 was called the Great Recession, and a lot of us who are in the financial sector and industry right now are concerned that, this could be worse than that. And so during that time, what happened was teachers went 8 to 10 years without getting any raise at all. And I certainly hope history does not repeat itself with that. But I think that's the thought with this budget and everything that's going into it, is we're going to be as conservative as we possibly can. We're going to make sure that we do not increase class sizes, and we're going to make sure that we keep all our existing employees that we have. And I think people are going to understand that.
Mr. Ramsey, I'm glad you mentioned the capital planning because that's also going to be an area that we're going to take a very large hit. So it's not just going to affect our general operating budget, it is also going to affect our capital budget as well. And the idea of using fund balance for that type of expenditure would be my recommendation as well.
We are very, very resilient, and we will get through it one way or the other.
Well, we'll be stronger.
We'll be stronger.
We will be better.
I have 2 kids homeschooling. I feel the pain of all parents that I am not a teacher. I don't want to teach geometry, 6th grade, 9th grade, social studies either. I wasn't real good at that. There are a lot of pain points for our teachers, for our kids, for our employees. I don't think we're tone deaf to how I have other parents up here who are homeschooling too. We feel your pain, and we realize how painful it is and how concerned people are. And really the thing about school board and school budgeting that makes it very hard is that generally people are focused on their immediate circle and their children. So if you have a senior graduating from high school, you're thinking about paying for senior supplies and whether you're going to have a graduation. If you have a 6th grader, you're hoping they get enough geometry to go on and do the next thing that they have to do. If you have a 1st grader, you're concerned about whether they can read. So not only are we going to have to keep these class sizes low, we don't know what the CDC is going to recommend for a class size, which could be even smaller, and we're going to have to intervene. Because I've taught my children geometry. Someone's going to have to help them. But I'm very concerned about the 1st graders who are going to essentially be 20 weeks from being in a classroom with their teacher and learning how to read. And some children that's much more difficult. There's money we're going to have to allocate on interventionists and trying to catch up for what this cost us. So there's a lot of pain points for our employees, for our kids, for our parents. We don't want to miss any of those things, but at least this is starting the conversation. We don't have all the ideas. So this is a repetitive process. We'll do this at least one more time. At least one more time. We'll have a public hearing, and then the budget will come through committee, and then it will come to the full board. So there is more work to be done. Search your heart, search your mind of things, anything that you know of that you think is a good idea, please offer it up. I encourage our employees, if you know things that are opportunity to be innovative, offer those things up as well. So, any other ideas or thoughts for Ms. Smith on cuts?
Please reach out to me anytime, and hopefully by the next budget workshop I will have numbers for you. I'll have a projection, and we'll be able to actually go in detail and look at all of the items on the budget.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. We'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Made the
So
motion.
moved.
All right, I got Mr. McQuillan with the motion.
Second.
Mr. Ramsey's got the second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.